we're Kristen and Kevin. I work at the bank. I'm a graphic designer and a digital specialist. But above all else, I'm super passionate about our community, which puts me in a great position to be at a bank. And to be able to leverage awesome things like hanging out with you cool people virtually as well, in cooking and just really building a good sense of community. We both have been doing Chelsea Cooks now for over a year.
I think it's been a year.
This is our first time with like a live audience. Oh my gosh. Okay. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself, Mr. Brewer?
So I'm a Lorax. I'm in tree preservation as a trade. So that's what I do. I mainly just make sure trees are healthy, happy, and do the best they can. And I really enjoy cooking for friends, family, and myself. I love to eat. We love good food, and we like to have a lot of fun with it. So that's it about me.
If you want to pass your phone over here, I can answer that question. So today we're going to show you guys how to make mustard. It's one of those things I think that, well, I guess I can just assume all of y'all love it because you're here to learn how to make it. But it's one of those things that people are really passionate about. They either feel like it is the best thing in the whole wide world or are very opinionated with how awful it is and how it should be outlawed. When I listed up this class, I got an equal mix of excitement and sheer, I will never come anywhere near mustard. And there was no one in the middle, which was really weird. But we are here, we're gonna teach you how to make a classic sort of whole grain mustard. And Kevin just recently, before I even knew we were gonna do this today, figured out how to make the French's yellow mustard, I guess, the you know, stain your face mustard.
They might come at me if I call it French's.
Yeah, so,
Like a yellow
or you
stain.
could sponsor us, we can make it. But so, I'm really excited about both of these. The greatest thing about mustard too is it's completely customizable to your taste buds. So if there's anything that you see us doing, minus taking out mustard, I think you can pretty much customize it to whatever you'd like. And we're going to tell you a couple of the journeys that we've been on with mustard. We've had some very, very fun combinations and some that we actually will never talk about again. And I'm certainly not doing it here in front of you guys. We've had some bombs of flavors, but you can't start experimenting until you start making it, right?
Yeah, there's only a couple simple rules you have to follow, and the rest is anything you want it to be.
Yeah. So we're going to show you the basics. We're going to tell you why those basics exist, and then we're going to let your freak flag fly and tell you a lot of the weird things you can put in it, or even strange combinations that I guarantee you you're not thinking about. That is a killer flavor. So the very first thing that I want to get into is if you're going to sit down and make mustard, you're going to want to make a huge batch. And the reason why is it takes time. This mustard's going to take quite some time to age. And then once it's, you know, the ingredients are all set up and it's been aged, it's got to go in your fridge and age for another whole step longer. So by the time you want your mustard, you're going to wish you had made a lot more of it. So right out of the gate, when you sit down to make your mustard, make it in bigger batches. It's cost effective to buy your ingredients in bulk. For those of you who are in person, we're going to set you up with a little kit to be able to take home where you can practice all of these things that you're going to learn here. We're going to show you actually today how to make your batch in a big batch, because I think it's really important to show you what that all looks like. Because sometimes when you scale things up, it can be a little disorienting. And we actually get our supplies, most of the time we get them online, and you can just literally Google mustard seeds in 1 pound bags. This is usually what it is that we get. And the good thing about doing the mustard in big batches is you pretty much go through these like really quickly. It's intimidating making such a huge batch, but it's actually kind of fun. So we just get big bulk batches of the yellow seed and the brown seed, and you can get them on Amazon. You can get them if you happen to have connections or a favorite spice shop. We don't have one like really close by for us where you can get them in bulk like that. And sometimes you can find them in the store. They'll sell like these really big containers. If you buy them in bulk on the bag, just as a heads up, it is so much more cost effective than when you buy them in these guys. So just to keep costs down, definitely go bulk. And the things you're used to seeing in little small containers come in these giant ones. And I just love seeing things you're used to seeing like that big, like huge. And they don't change anything. They just scale it up. And this is the mustard powder. Hopefully y'all can see this.
And when I first bought that one, I never thought I'd need a second, but there it is.
Yeah, yeah. We've made so much mustard that it's like probably the number one thing that comes to our mailbox, which is scary. That's a lot of mustard we go through. And some of you guys are actually our biggest mustard fans. You guys go through a lot of mustard, so you have to make it, right? So we're actually gonna start this journey off with the classic yellow mustard, because the yellow mustard is a specific recipe. That one you're not gonna wanna customize too much. Well, I mean, you can, but it's so simple on the ingredients, and we're trying to replicate, you know, the classic yellow mustard. So we're gonna start with that one, and then we're gonna end up with the whole grain, where we can talk about all of the fun, awesome, crazy combinations. So I'm making it sound like it's simple, but do you wanna take the reins and yellow mustard us?
Yeah, so a little bit about mustard in general. When you're mixing your ingredients, you can measure out all your dry ingredients first and add the wet ones to them. If you add cold water as a liquid, or cold vinegar, or cold acid, it's gonna be a spicy mustard. There's science involved I don't understand. But the colder the liquid when you add it, chemicals, spicier mustard. If you like a tamer mustard, you would heat the liquids first before adding them to your dry ingredients. Like I said, I've read it a few times and I still haven't quite wrapped my head around how that works, but it's true. We tried it.
We did try it. We did it warm and we did it ice cold, and it legitimately is, one has way more bite when you make it with cold liquids, and one absolutely is a lot more milder. Something about the oil and the way that so that's the science, yeah. It's very scientific.
And it's the acidity in mustard that makes that process break down slower over time. So usually that's why later on we leave our mustard on the counter for so many days before we put it in the fridge, because also then the cold slows it down more. So you age it to really like the flavor of it, and then put it in the fridge, and that kind of stabilizes it for quite a while.
Yeah, all throughout this process, when you make your own at home, which I do hope you'll do, you're gonna probably eat mustard like every day while you're trying to taste it and see where you want it. So we eat mustard every day.
But the basic yellow mustard really is, once you make it, you have to cook it down a couple times, and then it's just, after it's in the fridge for a day, it's ready to go. It really doesn't need to age. You know, that was pretty much tried and true. So we start that with 3/4 of a cup of the mustard powder. My lovely assistant.
I know. This is gonna be fun. 3/4 of a cup.
Yep.
Can I use this guy?
You can. Grab you that.
Nice. This stuff is magical.
And this, you know, you can use just the yellow mustard seed, and you could just blend that down to a powder if you wanted. You could leave it a little grainier if you wanted more of a whole grain yellow mustard. But I find it more like the classic recipe if you just go straight with the Coleman's powder.
In here?
Yep, 3/4 of a cup right in the bowl. And then we're gonna have a teaspoon of salt.
I'm on it.
And the Coleman's, I think it's a
Like
English
giant
mustard.
salt.
So they're gonna be a little spicier than the French mustard. But again, we like spicy mustard, so that's why we kind of lean towards those kinds of ingredients.
Although this wasn't practical.
They don't need practical. It looks
I
good.
need practical. I'm
good.
suffering. Look at me.
Visuals.
Visuals here.
Visuals.
This is what all you guys are gonna look like when you do this with your giant bags of salt. Right?
Perfect. We're gonna go with a 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. And the turmeric really just helps with that bright yellow color.
Yeah, the be careful with this. This is awful.
Keep it off you.
Oh man, don't drop it. It like you will be stained to this color for the rest of your lives. Like this is orange goodness.
But yeah, that's gonna, you know,
What am I
that's gonna
doing?
give it that bright yellow color. It's gonna
1/2
help keep the
teaspoon.
color stable. 1/2 teaspoon.
On it. Oh boy.
Easy.
I know, we just reinvented this branch. Do you think that they'll be happy with me if I stain it flaming orange? Too bad turmeric's not purple. Okay.
1/4 teaspoon onion powder.
Like, look at the sizes of these things. This is how often we do this.
And again, those are things you can play with. You could use fresh garlic if you wanted.
Yes,
Yeah. You know, that's all. And changing the flavors. That's the creativity of it. This one really is your mustard powder and your liquids. You know, the amount of acid you need is more for the preservation of it. You have to get to a certain acidity, and that's what makes it stable on your shelf or in the refrigerator for a long period of time. Everything besides that is just for flavor. So that's all. Everything you can play with, basically. Quarter teaspoon of garlic.
Oh gosh, I'm starving now. Can you smell that online? I hope so. I haven't made that yet. It should. For Chelsea cooks, we should design that.
Then a quarter teaspoon of paprika.
Paprika.
I don't know whether to say paprika.
Nope, paprika.
Paprika it is.
I think this also is the majority for color as well. Okay.
And then to that, we're gonna add 1 cup of cold water.
Can I use my? Do I need to keep this dry?
Keep one dry.
So in our household, what is that look that I just gave my husband? That is the look of you're supposed to do all your dry ingredients first, and then you do your wet ingredients. But if you have the attention span of a fly, you just start doing everything in one container, and then you realize that none of your powders are coming out because your measuring cup is wet. And so I warned him that there was a possibility I could go rogue, and now I'm terrified to put the dry stuff and the wet stuff and just make a mess. So here we are. 1 cup
1 cup.
on it. And this is really ice cold. We've never done it this cold. Can I put that in?
Right in there. So
Delicious.
this part, you can mix this right in your pan because you're gonna cook this down.
We wanted you to be able to see it.
But just so you could see it. And then you're actually gonna see a live swap out in a live audience.
I know.
So you whisk that up, it's pretty wet.
We don't have a commercial to play though.
And then, you know, it's a pretty wet. So you cook that down.
And it's interesting
basically
because it smells more garlicky and oniony, which is weird.
as about on a low simmer until it's down to about a mustard consistency. Once you get it cooked down to that kind of, or even a little thicker, maybe like a paste, then you would add a 1/2 cup of vinegar to it. So we've already cooked it down from the water, and I've cooked out some of the vinegar, but we just left a little bit in here this is when it really brightens up into this bright yellow color.
That's interesting.
And that's when you add the vinegar and then cook it down, it turns out really bright yellow.
We're doing the bank a favor by not cooking down a 1/2 cup of vinegar in this office.
And you'll be glad you're wearing your masks.
Yes, oh my gosh.
So you can see it's pretty runny now, but that'll cook down just on a low simmer, continually stirring. That'll cook down. When it's the consistency you want, you just turn it off, put it back in the jar, let it cool down on the counter for a bit, and then throw it in the fridge.
If you accidentally get distracted and you accidentally cook it down a little bit more than you want, you can just add a tiny bit of water, a tiny bit of vinegar, depending on what you think it's missing. When we did this experiment the first time, when we made it the day of, we were like, oh, this is awesome, this is great. The next day, when our noses weren't consumed by mustard burn, which is a real thing, we realized it needed a little more vinegar. So we just added the vinegar, we'll just cook it down. And that's actually what this is we had realized that it needed just like a little more vinegar. But that's the great thing about these types of experiments is if you overdo one thing, you can fix it easily by adding just a couple of little pinches of other things. And since you're only cooking it down, you're condensing flavors. So that's really what you're going for is the right flavor that you want, but also the right texture that you want so that whatever it is you're planning on putting it on, it's not going to just like fall off or slide off, You can't see in there, but that's awesome. That's kind of
pretty
cool.
bright yellow.
It smells mustardy.
So some other fun things you can do with the yellow mustard that it goes really well with is like using it as a rub for a barbecue to get different spices to stick to like a rack of ribs or a brisket or something.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of flavor going on, but it teens out pretty well after smoking it for a while.
We use it to get our barbecue. I think almost everything we do, we cover it in mustard, put the rub on it. And it's shocking how much it helps balance the flavors because mustard kind of balances sweet and bitter flavors really, really well. So if you're using, especially with a smoker, you run the risk of getting like tiny bit of that, like that smoky smoke. The mustard really helps to balance those flavors. But you wouldn't know, I think, if you ate most barbecue that it was made with a barbecue rub. But most people are doing that. That little trick there. It does matter. The other thing that we love to do, with the yellow mustard versus the whole grain, is use it as a base for salad dressings, oils. The best part about making your own is you can really take on flavor combinations of your favorite foods, only it's your own mustard. And so it tastes different and more magical than when you just buy a salad dressing or mustard really off the shelf. So
We have an audience member that makes a really good steak sauce with it.
oh my gosh, I forgot about that. That's why we supply them with like mustard, right?
Yeah.
So you're just continuing to stir that guy, right?
You just want to keep stirring it. You smell a lot of vinegar and mustard if you weren't wearing a mask. But that's why we did most of it at home. It might take a minute or so.
Yeah, I'm thinking we should, if you want to turn that down, just a little bit. I think you guys understand the principle of just cooking it down until it's the right, sauce that you're going for. Just like when you're cooking out tomato sauce or anything else. But to get to the more fun stuff, we'll let that guy kind of boobalate off into the corner there. Huh? Yeah, well, you can shut it off. You can just condense it down. That's what I would say.
Done.
It's the perfect thickness. You guys can't tell because it's in a pan. Let's leave it at that. It actually is.
Yeah, it's not bad.
That is good. All right. Flip.
So the next one is our classic mustard recipe that we started with a while ago.
This guy.
And this is our go-to. It's the one we usually make about a gallon of it at a time, just so we can have that ready for like 6 months, give it to friends, things like that. And we designed it to be basically just so it's a whole bottle of water.
Yeah, it maximizes the other reason that you want to make big batches, and I touched on this a little bit earlier. It maximizes your ingredients. So we use wine to make our mustard. Most of them will use a wine. This is one of those liquids that is absolutely customizable, and we'll talk about that as we go through. For our mustard, we do prefer the sort of, I guess I want to say funk that the wine will add, because it is getting aged. So the wine it doesn't come through in the flavors as much as it adds a lot of that sort of the aged flavor on it. And that we have found only comes from a bottle of wine versus some other liquids. But we'll get into that. So the gallon recipe is awesome because you can use a whole bottle of the wine. You're not opening up a bottle of wine and then you're just kind of stuck with it. I mean, certainly not in this household, but maybe others. I've never heard of wine going to waste in our household, but it just made an easier ingredient grab to just do it all calculated on using up big ingredients.
So this one is, we make this one mostly with the whole grain mustard and then blend it to the way we like it. So there's some whole grain, some chopped up.
Yeah,
so
talk
we just
about
use-
that for texture and what that matters. Like,
Yeah, so you can go, 100% whole grain, like either one of these, which aren't ground at all,
we didn't grind any of the seeds.
to, yellow mustard, which is 100% ground.
And I think these two guys over here are also
These are kind
ground.
of middle of the road.
Yep.
These are pretty well ground. And these are all different experiments we've tried over the days. But
Yeah.
for
So-
this reason, usually we do about, half unground and half slightly ground.
And what I like about it is it gives you the texture almost right away. So for us, we have found, and we'll explain this a little bit later as we get on, we have found that in the aging process, we prefer the wholer grains in the aging because it makes for a really great texture. But we do have a couple of special requests where they'll say, we're not whole grain people. And so we'll blend it, and it also is great. But we like to age it for quite some time. So if you don't like to age it, or you're too excited and you can't wait, which definitely is gonna happen. We've eaten so much mustard that we're like, that still has a month left to go, but it's so good. If it tastes right and you're ready to eat it, then just get into it. So you can grind the seeds, half and half if you want to, grind just a little bit. Our usual mix is, we will put all of our ingredients into our big giant guy, and then we usually just do maybe a little scoop, and whatever fits in our little tiny baby blender, that's the magical ratio that we blend. So it's very scientific. Whatever fits into your blender is what you'll do.
So for this recipe, we do 3 cups of brown mustard seed. And
This guy's got moisture.
go with the 4 cups.
Oh man.
We got another one now.
We're already off the rails. All right, scissors.
And the brown mustard seed and the yellow mustard seed have a little different flavors. You can even, you can change which one you like more of.
Oh yeah, definitely do that experiment too, because that's really fun. If you go with more brown on one and more yellow on the other, that is fun because it does change. This is what, 3 cups?
3 now.
3 cups.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is why you have to buy in bulk. You'll also notice that sometimes I'm over the mark. I mean, if you can read from where you're sitting or online, you're doing way better than I am, but this is not a precise thing at all. You can go over pinches and drabs. It doesn't really matter. This is not one of those things where you have to have it exactly just so for it to do what it's going to do. And as you get really confident and more comfortable, you'll learn that you can totally just even forget an ingredient, which I've definitely done. And somehow it still comes out really good. And you're like, oh, so why are you in my mustard?
As long as you don't forget the mustard.
As long as you don't forget the mustard. Do you want me to put some of these in here now?
Yeah, we'll chuck some of those in there.
So I'm just putting just a little bit in there. I've had that magic bullet my whole life practically, so I don't like to overwork, and we have to upgrade our kitchen equipment to more adult things because my poor little bullets.
So then we're gonna do 2.5
2.5.
yellow.
I'm gonna use this guy because it's open.
And as you get going, like if it ends up after a couple days, it looks like it's a little dry, you can add a little more liquid. That's why it doesn't really matter. If it looks a little too wet, you can grind some more mustard seed and add it in there. It's completely adjustable. And
Because this is something that, once we've done all of this magic, because this is something that's gonna be sitting on your counter for a couple of days while you're aging it to whatever your taste buds tell you to, it's really visible to you, so you won't forget to check on it every now and again. Sometimes, in the coming days after you start doing it, don't make any judgments yet, because it does take probably, I would say, like maybe 2 days or so to start getting thicker, like to the point where you think it might be too thick or cakey. Then you would add some liquid to it, but this will be mostly visible to you because it'll be on your counter for up to 10 days, which is what we do. Because we're funky people, we like it funky. This is gonna be an awful sound and I apologize in advance. So we're just gonna give this a quick grind, so do it. And we're not going for powder. So we're not gonna go for a powder, and some of them aren't even gonna get ground at all. I would say we're going for like a pretty decent just crack up, but you're not going to a mustard powder. Is that good? I mean, it's just our mustard. Well, it's actually some of our friends' mustard.
somebody's gonna have to help us eat.
Someone's gonna have to help us eat it. We've made a lot of mustard preparing for this class, let me tell you. Yeah. So we're just looking at it going, I think we could use a little more yellow grind. It's really strange how much brown mustard seed you use and how in the end it comes out like that. Pretty yellow. Delicious. You don't need to be stirring these at all. I just do it because it's fun. It's like the most fun part of it. And it feels good. It's very satisfying.
Playing in the sand.
It's like playing in the sand, yeah. It's like when you're making rice. I'm like, oh, let's mess around with the rice for a couple hours. This is good. All right,
Chuck the rest of your seed in there.
we're halfway there.
Don't let the birds
Just
see you.
in here.
And half a cup of yellow mustard powder.
Yeah. This is how you end up going through all of your stuff. Super quick. What am I doing? Half cup? For the record, I'm never a part of the measuring. If you know me, you know that I'm focused much more on art and winging it. But thankfully, we have a mathematical science guy on our team.
I'm stressed about watching this.
I'm just a dash cooker. Let's just chuck a little of this in there. It's great. Yeah, let's go nuts. All right. There's a little extra for
Looking
love.
good.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You didn't get to watch his anxiety as it was hiding behind here. Sorry, guys. And now you're also getting a nice intimate look on our marriage. Okay,
Cup of salt.
cup of
That's a
salt.
lot of salt.
Okay, see, this is why you needed a big one. All right, I'm feeling much better about my choices here. Let's just move this guy. So I think right out of the gate, some people might feel like a cup of salt is a lot. I would encourage you to follow the recipe the way that it is on the recipe card, only because you'd be surprised with the amount of acids we're gonna add, the way that the mustard tastes in general. You'd be shocked at how little of that salt in the end comes through. If you didn't put the salt in, it throws it off. It's sort of like it's very dull and a little more bitter than you want. And that really, you need the salt to balance.
And right out of the gate, if you try it right after you mix it, it's gonna taste really salty because it's just in the water.
Yes.
Once it absorbs into all that grain and seed, it's gonna change.
I would say for mustard, the biggest thing that we learned was when we first started, we made a recipe like to the T. We followed everything. And then as soon as we did that and we tasted it, we were like, oh my gosh, we could do this so much better. And then we made some little tweaks and some other things. But if we had second guessed ourselves, which we did second guess all that salt in the beginning, but we did it the way they said. And in the end, it doesn't come through the way that you feel like it is. So I do encourage you to follow the recipe, get to know how all the flavors come together, then get a little creative with it. So you got to kind of trust a little bit that over time, everyone's going to do what they need to do.
And that is all of our dry ingredients. So now you can use any measuring cup you want for anything.
Oh my God, I'm going to use a little bit of all of them.
So we need 3 cups of apple cider vinegar.
All right. So for this mustard batch, we like it spicy. If you can't tell from our awesome banter, we like our mustard to kind of like fight back at us. So we do everything as icy cold as we possibly can. So I'm gonna just pull these guys out. Ooh, secret ingredient alert. And some wine. Okay, so what am I starting with? The cider?
Yep, 3/4 of a cup. No, 3 cups. 3 cups of apple cider vinegar. And this is the important part. It's the acidity of it again. So that's why we use vinegar and wine. They're fairly acidic.
They're really
And
acidic.
again, yeah, that's what keeps it stable, for a long time.
It's how you get the nice mustard pucker. Again, this is gonna feel freakish when you're like, oh my God, 3 cups of liquids of a vinegar, but this is also the size of mustard you're making, so. I'm not gonna make it that big, but we are.
I hope you do.
I hope you do too. It's so worth it.
And then we use 2.5 cups of sauerkraut juice. So we just buy like the 1 bag, Boar's Head, the bigger one in the deli. If you squeeze that down, you'll get about 2.5 cups of sauerkraut juice out of it, but it gives it a really nice tang.
The
A nice
reason,
little zip.
and the reason we do it too is because it has a little bit of that alive factor that adds, it chews on all of this awesomeness in here. And we leave it out on our counter And that live kraut juice adds that little bit of funk like you would get from a sauerkraut aging on your counter. If you are not a sauerkraut person, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not, but I love our mustard, so I trust it. So if you're not, there are some substitutions that you can totally use. I would recommend it.
Yeah, the other benefit of it is any fermentation that you get is gonna help get that pH even lower. So again, it's gonna help.
And we're not gonna get
Keep that
geeky with
shelf stable.
fermentation, but we're gonna tell you a couple of little cool things to know, because when you do change out some of your ingredients, you're gonna get a couple of weird reactions and things, and we can help tell you about those things while keeping you food safe. I just wanna pour a bottle of wine in
2.5
there.
cups of
Oh
kraut
my
juice.
gosh, you just keep talking, and then I just get so, it's very crowdy. It's very crowdy.
The brunch is gonna smell lovely.
Oh my good gosh, I'm so sorry, West
It's still
Side.
mask mandates.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry,
Nobody's
West
gonna
Side.
notice.
I don't know, that was a mask.
Probably.
You just made me pour that in and you measured it out before.
I said there's 2.5 cups in a
He
pack.
just wanted to see me slow pour that, sweating that I didn't have enough. I see what's going on here.
You wanted to smell.
Okay, that smells funky. Yeah, you're smelling it out, right?
Yeah.
Don't try, it will work out. That's what the bottle of wine is for. This is for you guys. Oh my gosh, so much sauerkraut juice. It's a weird ingredient to add. It's one of those things that everyone says, your mustard tastes different from everyone else's. It's got so much flavor, it's really bold, and then they start asking us for more, or dancing around asking us for more. And I do happen to think that it comes down to the fact that the cold ingredients, the sauerkraut juice and the wines. Can I add the bottle of
It is
wine?
time.
Okay. Is it gonna get in here?
It's gonna go.
Oh my God. So I use a Sauvignon Blanc. I want it as dry and acidic as possible. I want that like citrusy grapefruit flavor, and I think that the Sauvignon Blancs are just like really great for it. If you happen to not be a Sauvignon Blanc fan for whatever reason, I'm sorry our friendship ends here, but if you happen to not be, you can use any other, I would imagine any other wine. I don't even know why you couldn't get into a rosé or whatever else. I just go for the Sauvignon Blanc because it's my favorite and it's super crisp. Check that out, man. Is that it? Did we just make mustard?
Good, we made
Oh
mustard.
my God, we made mustard. All right.
And that it looks like, again, very, very wet there, but it'll thicken right up into a good mustard for you.
Yeah, so that's what the weird part is,
And it
and that's
turns
why, yeah, and it does turn yellow. That's why I say don't judge it for a couple of days. And the reason why is because it will look like this, and your flavors are not married yet. So this beautiful beast is going to, if this is us in our house with our taste buds, we would be putting this cap on it. Well, we would talk to it a little bit because we're really super proud of it. And we would leave this out on our counter. We started leaving it out for 5 days, but that wasn't funky enough. We left it out for a week, and then I forgot when Kevin told me to put it in the fridge, and it made it 10 days, and it was really good. So that was a happy accident. We go 10 days, but I encourage you when you do it, just get in there each time and give it a little try.
Yeah,
It
stir it every day.
changes. Yeah, stir it
And then
again.
That's after 7 days.
So this mustard that is here is what we just did here, only in a really small baby batch, which I just realized to other people, a pint of mustard is probably not a baby batch.
Probably not. But also, this one is.
You're not in our world.
yeah. So you
This
can
is-
see how much thicker that
It's a
gets.
serving.
It gets nice.
Yeah. And we do like it that way too. We like it to like the spoon kind of sticks up in it. I find that when you add this to hot foods, the thicker is actually a little bit better because when it does get not a lot looser though, but it'll get a little bit looser when you do heat it up. So like in a hot dog or a sausage situation, I think, make it whatever consistency. But if you do cook with it, you might want it a little bit thicker. If for whatever reason you have no idea what happened and it is so super watery, you can just add in a couple more seeds first, and then just kind of test that out a little bit. I wouldn't recommend adding more of the mustard powder. I would go more on the seeds. Again, taste it every time that you do any alteration so that, and most critical, write it down. Because this is gonna sit on the counter for 10 days. Once that's done, it's then gonna go through one of two processes. It'll either go in our fridge for 2 months and just sit in the back of the fridge all sad waiting for us to eat it, or we would process it through hard canning, and we would, after it was hard canned, we would put it in our basement and never speak of it again for the same 2 months. Both processes are fine. Also, if you wanted to eat it after it was in the fridge for a week is also fine. Just keep tasting it. Maybe take a scoop out and leave some in your fridge as it's aging so you can see,
Yeah, try it. It's gonna be a little more bitter and spicy in the beginning, and then it's gonna mellow out and be a little balanced in the end, so.
It does. And if you use your warm liquids because you don't like the bite, it will be even more mellower and smooth. When you use the cold liquids, because you're going for spicy, aging it a little bit longer is really beneficial because it really cuts out, when you're like back of your throat just goes, it cuts that out a little bit, although we enjoy it. So we definitely, this is ready for us to slurp now. But if you're going for a mellow flavor, you might not need to age it for the 2 months. It might be just fine after 1 month because it's already sort of tame to start with. You're not kicking it up with cold ingredients.
And the more you grind the seed, the faster it'll absorb the liquid too. So. But before you adjust it, always just let it hang out for a couple days to at least see where it starts.
Yeah, little changes take a long time to come through. So if you do tweak something, give it a couple of days to let it get through, and definitely stir it. As far as food safety goes, if you decide to swap out any one of the liquids for something different, I would just be mindful of how long you're keeping it on your counter. I know that absolutely nothing's going to live in this wonderful pot of acid that we've made here. Between the sauerkraut juice, the wine and the vinegar, there's not much bad that's gonna happen.
And the salinity.
And the salinity, yeah, oh, for sure. So I know nothing bad's gonna happen, but definitely be mindful of the fact that if you do make a swap out that is maybe a sweeter swap out, we've made one here where we didn't do the sauerkraut and we actually used pineapple juice, and that was so delicious, but it didn't need to age on the counter for the 10 days that this did.
And then other creative flavors, we have one, this is a mustard, just whole grain, and then we just used pickled jalapeno brine for all of it.
We do all of our pickling. So we got to the end of the season and we had a whole we had a whole jar worth of the liquid. And so we kind of got weird one day and we're like, let's just throw that in the mustard recipe and see what it does. And we are, I would say, shamelessly hooked. And in combination with the pineapple mustard, it's really good. We like to do little mustard tastings.
Yep.
So all those different flavors. So you can change out your acid. You can change out your liquids too. And it's okay to use sweet as well. I wouldn't be intimidated by that. I just don't put milk in it, I guess. I mean, that's on you if you do that. And I'm not even gonna tell you what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna let you experience that on your own, but
yeah,
milky mustard.
We use pH strips and pH meters
Yes.
to check our creations.
So we're avid fermenters, and by that I mean Kevin is, and he's got really neat tools. For those of you who do not ferment a lot, really cool, cheap way to get into it is with pH strips. And then just follow the guide, and then listen to people like us who tell you what number your mustard's supposed to be at, which is 4.
So, yeah, it has to be below 4.5. That's the minimum. But 4 is what we aim for, if not lower. And that's where you can be creative, but that's the only rule on the acidities. It has to be around 4. That's low enough where just the harmful bacteria can't grow. So with these, you can just easy color coded, and you can test your liquid before you add it and say, I want to make one with pineapple juice, and you can try it and say, all right, that's not quite acidic enough. It's going to need a little bit of something else. And if you don't want to change the flavor, but need to change the pH, you can use just powdered citric acid. It has no flavor, just a little bit goes a long way. And that'll get the pH down to safe, so you can really do any flavor you want.
Go definitely look up and do your research when you're adding anything to make something food safe. I do not want you to take anything you hear today and go gospel and then have a botulism experience. So please, dear God, do your research on your quantity and your ingredients and read up a little bit so that you know what's food safe with what you put in there. I definitely don't want you to have any sort of bad experience. I will say in our whole time of experimentation, and we've gotten weird with fermentation, we've never gotten ourselves sick. But we do a lot of work to make sure that we're always, if we add something sweet, is thyme on our side? Is the acid right? Is the pH right? So that we're not gonna get ill.
Yeah, and if you do a lot of it like we do, they also make meters that you can use. One benefit to the meter is you can just read it. These sometimes, if you have something that's extremely colorful, like if you make something that has chili powder in it,
Or
it's gonna be hard to see the color through what you're making.
Yeah.
So that's one benefit to using a meter over the strips, but the strips are very good.
Especially if you're not gonna ferment anything ever except the one time a year you make your big batch of mustard, you're fine. And more than likely you're not going to have an issue, but we would be totally.
And we just played with those for the first time like 2 days ago.
It worked.
They will stain your finger.
Oh yeah, the weird pH, not these though, the ones that.
Different one we tried, yeah.
We for our research, we did a bunch of different pH testers. For anyone who goes out and buys the pH strips, buy the ones with the plastic. Because the one that's the paper, like turmeric, it's on you for like ever.
Yep.
And so we've saved you from being orange, like a lot this class, like a lot. So much orange.
Other fun things, any one of them, you can just turn into honey mustard. People usually go with just 50-50 mustard and honey. You don't need to make it like that right out of the gate. You can just take a tablespoon of each if that's what you wanted, and you can do all sorts of fun stuff with it.
Yeah, I think the pineapple was our most surprising. Kevin makes his own sauerkraut and he uses a purple cabbage to make his sauerkraut. That purple cabbage, when he used the juice, it made this really kind of really cool looking purpley mustard, which was really great. It tasted the same as all of the other ones, but it looked more gorgeous. So highly recommend if you're a sauerkraut maker, do it with the purple because it's way cooler. Stains though, again, I don't think you can get into fermentation and cooking without knowing full on that you're going to be like all different shades of the rainbow of food.
That's as simple as it is. It's a lot of fun and creativity that can go into it.
Yeah. And this will change every day, just a little bit. And then one day you'll wake up and it will look like that, which is just really cool. If you do decide to hard can, it's not hard to do at all, but just please follow the processing times for mustard and just do it safely. That's really the only thing. I do say if you do make it in a big batch and you do hard can it, I find it does come out just a tiny bit better when you open it up after 6 months or so. That's just because I have the benefit of making 7-8 gallons of mustard. Which, I mean, in 2 years isn't so bad, but you gotta love mustard. That's for sure.